The office was buzzing with quiet laughter as Martha Turner, an elderly woman with a calm smile and modest attire, entered the lobby. Dismissive glances and whispered jokes followed her, each one assuming she was lost or in the wrong place. Little did they know, the woman they overlooked was about to reveal a truth that would shake the entire company and leave them speechless. Watch what happens when the woman they underestimated takes charge and turns their world upside down. Martha adjusted her scarf and took a steady breath as she stepped into the sleek glass doors of Collins & Company, a bustling corporation she'd just joined. The reception area buzzed with employees hurrying to their desks, each one preoccupied with their routines. Martha paused for a moment, taking it all in. The smell of freshly brewed coffee, the hum of chatter, and the faint ding of the elevator in the distance. This was her world now, yet it already felt like a place where she was an outsider. She held her bag close, her attire modest, perhaps a bit too plain by the standards of this office, but she wore it with a quiet confidence. The simple clothing and calm manner often made others overlook her, a fact she had grown used to. Martha approached the front desk, where a young receptionist, Jen, barely glanced up from her screen. With a warm smile, Martha introduced herself. "Hello, dear. I'm Martha. I believe I'm expected here today." Jen nodded briefly, directing Martha to a waiting area without much interest, assuming she was there for a low-level job or perhaps as a new cleaning staff. Martha's eyes, however, stayed alert, noticing everything around her: the polished floors, the artwork on the walls, the employees who walked past without a second glance. She settled herself quietly in the seat, folding her hands in her lap, a faint smile tugging at her lips as she watched the interactions around her. Nearby, two young employees, Julie and Mike, whispered and chuckled to each other, casting glances in her direction. "Guess HR's lowering their standards," Julie murmured, and Mike snickered in response, glancing over at Martha as if she were invisible. Martha's expression didn't change, but inside, she felt a familiar sting, one she'd felt many times before. She chose to let it roll off her shoulders, staying calm, knowing they had no idea who she was or what she had achieved to be here. As she waited, Martha's mind wandered back to her journey, the countless hours spent building her career, studying and working harder than anyone she knew just to reach this level. There had been setbacks, moments that nearly broke her, but she had pushed through. She'd overcome challenges her colleagues today could never imagine, but she was wise enough to know that her past didn't show on her face. It wasn't written in the lines of her hands or the color of her skin. Yet those experiences had left her stronger, and that strength carried her now as she waited patiently, observing the room with quiet dignity. After a few minutes, an employee named Sasha, a young woman with kind eyes, walked by and offered Martha a soft smile, a rare warmth amid the sea of indifferent faces. Martha returned the smile, nodding with a gentle acknowledgement. She noticed that Sasha lingered for a second, looking as though she might say something, but then thought better of it and walked away. In that brief moment, Martha saw something different, a small spark of respect or curiosity, unlike the dismissive looks she'd been receiving from the others. Just then, Martha caught a faint whiff of coffee and glanced towards the break room door, which had been left slightly ajar. Inside, two employees were deep in conversation, laughing about something. She recognized them as the same ones who had been glancing her way earlier. Their words floated out, careless and unfiltered. "Did you see the lady in the lobby?" One of them scoffed. "Who knows what she's even doing here? HR's standards must be slipping." Martha's heart tightened for a moment, but she reminded herself of the big picture, the purpose behind why she was here, and the resolve she carried. She knew she was close to something bigger, something these employees couldn't possibly see yet. Despite the whispers and the assumptions, Martha's spirit remained calm. She had played this part before, and in a way, she understood that people often only saw what they wanted to see. And that was fine, she thought to herself, because when the time came, she would reveal the truth. But not yet. She let a small, amused smile play on her lips, knowing that soon, very soon, they would see her for who she truly was. Martha's patience was unwavering as she sat quietly, watching the clock tick by. The office had settled into its morning rhythm, with people typing away at computers and a low hum of phone conversations filling the space. Occasionally, she noticed an employee pass by and give her a cursory glance, curiosity flickering in their eyes before they quickly looked away. She could almost feel the weight of their assumptions, simple judgments based on her appearance, her age, the way she held herself with such calm. And yet in their busy world of sharp suits and quick glances, no one seemed to question whether there was more to her than what they saw. Just as she was beginning to settle into the rhythm of the room, a man in his mid-30s named Tom strode confidently through the reception area. He wore an expensive suit, his posture straight and purposeful, carrying himself as if he owned the place. With a slight smirk, he noticed Martha sitting in the corner, looking almost out of place in the sterile corporate environment. He gave her a quick nod and, in a voice that was just loud enough for those around him to hear, said, "Lost, are we?" "The Senior Activities Club is down the street, ma'am." A ripple of quiet laughter came from a few onlookers, but Martha remained composed, her gaze steady. She looked up at him with a faint smile, not a trace of irritation crossing her features. "Thank you, young man," she replied warmly. "But I'm quite where I need to be." Her voice held a calm strength, a tone that seemed to disarm Tom just a little, though he quickly covered his surprise with a forced grin. "Well," he muttered half to himself, "don't let me keep you from whatever it is you're doing." He brushed past her, shaking his head slightly as he joined a small group of colleagues, whispering with a tone that she could tell was anything but respectful. She caught phrases like charity case and mismanagement slipping from their low voices, words that cut but didn't reach deep enough to break through her steady composure. She'd learned long ago to let such comments pass, to wear their words like armor and let them clatter to the ground. After a moment, Martha leaned back in her chair, her gaze drifting as she recalled the days when her journey had started. She thought of the long nights she'd spent studying and the sacrifices she had made, moments she had put everything aside to build a career that at the time had seemed almost out of reach. She thought about the times she'd been underestimated, dismissed and overlooked, not unlike today. Yet each of those moments had shaped her, sharpened her resolve, and prepared her for days like this. Another employee, a young intern with nervous energy, approached her timidly, clearly not knowing what to make of her. "Excuse me, ma'am, can I help you with something?" he asked, his voice unsure. Martha's eyes softened as she looked at him, sensing his sincerity. "Thank you, dear," she said, "but I'm fine right here. I'm just waiting to speak with someone about my new role." She chose her words carefully, letting them linger without giving too much away. The intern nodded, still looking a bit unsure but respectful, offering her a small smile before returning to his duties. From the corner of her eye, Martha noticed Sasha, the kind young woman from earlier, glancing at her from across the room. Sasha seemed to be observing her more closely now, as if picking up on something different about Martha's presence. There was a hint of curiosity in Sasha's eyes, a slight questioning of what everyone else had assumed so easily. Martha felt a spark of hope. Perhaps someone here would see beyond the surface, but she knew that the time for revelations hadn't yet come. Martha shifted in her seat, a quiet resolve settling in her heart as she continued to wait, her expression calm and unbothered. She knew that every second ticking by was bringing her closer to that inevitable moment of truth. For now, she was content to let them assume, to let them whisper and laugh. Her presence was her silent message to them, and soon enough they would realize that everything they thought they knew was about to be turned on its head. As Martha continued to wait, the office's energy pulsed around her, employees bustling back and forth, immersed in their roles, too preoccupied to give her much more than a passing glance. She observed them with a quiet, almost amused detachment, watching how they moved within their routines, certain of their place and purpose. She imagined that in their minds everything was set in order, predictable, and people like her, ordinary-looking, unassuming, didn't factor into the equations of power or influence. She heard another set of footsteps approaching, lighter but quick and purposeful. Julie, one of the younger employees who had laughed with Mike earlier, walked by with a folder clutched to her chest. She caught sight of Martha and gave her an almost dismissive nod, a polite gesture covering the hint of impatience in her eyes. Martha could tell Julie thought she was out of place here. With a quick, superficial smile, Julie asked, "Can I help you find someone?" Martha met her gaze, holding her own smile steady. "Oh, I'll be meeting someone very soon," she replied simply. Her answer seemed to catch Julie off guard, though she tried not to show it. There was something in Martha's tone, a certainty, that lingered in the air even after Julie had walked away, casting a slight frown over her polished, confident face. Just then, there was a change in the room's atmosphere. A door to one of the conference rooms opened, and the familiar face of the CEO, Mr. Collins himself, appeared. He was in his 60s, with an aura of authority and experience, though softened by a gentle smile. As he scanned the lobby, his eyes landed on Martha, and in a single instant, his face broke into an expression of genuine warmth. "Ms. Turner," he called out, his voice carrying across the room, cutting through the background noise. Heads turned sharply. The entire room seemed to hold its breath as Mr. Collins crossed the lobby, his hand extended in greeting. The whispers from earlier died out as the employees watched, suddenly tense, their previous laughter and assumptions silenced by confusion. Martha rose gracefully, meeting Mr. Collins's handshake with a firm, assured grip. "It's good to finally be here, Mr. Collins," she said, her tone calm yet resonating with quiet power. "Welcome to the team, Martha," he replied, using her first name in a way that spoke of familiarity and respect. The warmth in his voice hinted that he knew exactly who she was and what she was capable of, an understanding lost on everyone else in the room. Julie, Mike, and several others watched, eyes widening as they pieced together that this woman wasn't an ordinary visitor. Martha's presence, her calm poise, and the obvious respect from the CEO shifted their perception in an instant. The look of confusion and discomfort on their faces was almost palpable, and Martha couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. She had waited patiently for this moment, and now the reality of who she was and what she was there to do was beginning to dawn on them. Mr. Collins, still standing beside Martha, gestured toward the conference room. "Shall we?" he asked, inviting her to join him in the meeting with a subtle air of importance. He shot a glance at the employees who had been whispering and chuckling minutes earlier, his expression a quiet reprimand. In that moment, they all seemed to shrink a little, their former smugness replaced by a sudden awareness of their missteps. As Martha followed Mr. Collins to the conference room, she glanced back at the employees who'd watched her with such dismissive eyes. Their faces now held a mixture of curiosity and embarrassment, and though they tried to mask it, the shame was evident. Martha's smile was calm, almost gracious, as if she were granting them silent forgiveness for their quick judgments. She knew, however, that the real revelation was still to come, and as she stepped into the conference room, she prepared herself for the next part of her introduction, the part that would leave no room for assumptions or misunderstandings. With a final nod to Mr. Collins, Martha settled into her seat at the head of the table, feeling the weight of the moment settle around her. She could sense the anticipation building outside the conference room, employees exchanging glances and wondering who this mysterious woman could be, why she was receiving such treatment from the CEO himself. The quiet thrill of the unfolding truth filled her, and she was ready to show them all exactly who she was. As Martha took her seat at the head of the conference table, she felt the stares of those outside the glass walls of the room. Through the transparent barrier, several employees loitered, casting curious glances, their confusion mixing with intrigue. Some looked slightly embarrassed, as if they had been caught doing something they shouldn't have, while others were simply shocked, struggling to reconcile the unassuming woman they'd overlooked with the one now sitting alongside the CEO himself. Mr. Collins began to speak, his voice a mix of pride and anticipation as he addressed those seated around the table, many of whom were senior managers. "Everyone, allow me to introduce Martha Turner," he said, looking at each of them with an expression that invited respect and attentiveness. "Martha is joining us as the new head of operations." His words landed with a quiet force that rippled through the room, each syllable like a small shockwave. The shift was almost immediate. The managers, who had barely looked her way before, now straightened in their seats, their eyes widening as they processed this information. Martha watched them, her face calm and composed, though her eyes held a glimmer of silent satisfaction. She could see realization settling into their faces, each expression telling its own story of surprise, regret, and a hint of self-reflection. A few of them even exchanged nervous glances, undoubtedly replaying moments from that morning when they had glanced her way with indifference or disrespect. In the hallway, Julie and Mike were frozen, watching through the glass with disbelief. Julie's hand drifted to her mouth, and for once the usual confidence in her eyes wavered. Mike, on the other hand, stared with his mouth slightly open, visibly processing the reality of the situation. The whispers and quiet laughter that had once filled the air around Martha were now replaced by stunned silence and wide-eyed stares. Mr. Collins continued, describing Martha's impressive background and vast experience in operations management. He detailed her success in streamlining departments and her talent for handling complex issues with a unique blend of empathy and efficiency. His words painted a picture of a leader who was not only capable, but truly exceptional, qualities that the room was only now beginning to grasp. Martha's gaze remained steady, her hands folded in front of her, as she listened to Mr. Collins speak. She was aware that each word seemed to deepen the weight of the moment, almost as if it were reclaiming all the respect she hadn't been given when she first walked in. For her, it was a quiet triumph, not just over the assumptions of the day, but over a lifetime of being underestimated, overlooked, and misjudged. And as she sat there calm and unwavering, she felt a surge of pride, not only in the position she now held, but in everything that had brought her to this point. When Mr. Collins finished, he looked over at her with a smile, nodding as if to say, "The floor is yours." Martha acknowledged his gesture, then turned to address the room. She met each manager's gaze with a look that was neither harsh nor reproachful, but simply knowing. In her eyes was a quiet understanding, one that conveyed strength and the wisdom of experience. "Thank you, Mr. Collins," she began, her voice calm yet firm, each word deliberate. "I am honored to be here and excited to work with each of you. I know that every person in this room has contributed to this company's success, and I look forward to bringing my own experience and perspective to help us reach even greater heights." She paused, letting her words sink in, her gaze never faltering. "But let me say this. I also understand what it's like to be underestimated and to find strength in that experience." The managers, still processing her presence, seemed taken aback by her words. Her tone was neither harsh nor accusatory, but her message was clear. She was not a woman to be dismissed, not by them or anyone else. And as she continued to speak, her voice grew even stronger, filling the room with the kind of authority that couldn't be questioned. Outside the conference room, those who had once watched her with judgment now looked on with something close to awe. They hadn't expected this from the woman they had laughed at only moments ago, and the realization was beginning to settle in. This was no ordinary first day, and Martha Turner was no ordinary woman. As Martha finished her introduction, a respectful silence hung in the room, each person absorbing the weight of her words. The managers exchanged glances, nodding slightly as if in silent acknowledgement of her authority. For a moment it seemed that everyone was wrapped in an unspoken understanding. She was the leader they hadn't anticipated, and her strength and experience were undeniable. The silence was broken as Mr. Collins leaned forward, directing the conversation back to business. "Martha has agreed to join us during an incredibly important time for Collins and Company," he began. "Her expertise is exactly what we need as we enter this new phase of restructuring." He paused, allowing his words to resonate with the group. Martha has a unique talent for bringing people together and streamlining operations, a skill set we need to adapt to new challenges and opportunities. I'm confident she'll help lead us to greater efficiency and success." As Mr. Collins continued, Martha noticed the subtle changes in the manager's postures. They were no longer leaning back with that easy confidence. Instead, they sat up straighter, paying attention, recognizing that Martha was not only an authority figure, but someone who would be a central part of their professional lives. She was someone they would need to listen to, respect, and perhaps even learn from. With the initial introductions out of the way, Mr. Collins transitioned into the details of the new project. He began laying out objectives, goals, and expectations, and as he did, Martha observed each of the managers, noting their reactions and body language. Some were attentive, taking notes, eager to impress, while others seemed more reserved, their earlier misjudgments likely leaving them unsure of how to approach her now. Still, Martha maintained her calm, assessing each person in the room with a level of insight that came naturally to her after years of experience in leadership roles. She noticed Tom, the man who had made the remark about the senior activities club in the lobby, sitting stiffly across from her, his gaze avoiding hers. He was fidgeting, occasionally glancing her way with an awkward, almost apologetic expression. Though he tried to keep his face neutral, Martha could see the hint of discomfort in his eyes. She held back a small smile, recognizing that he was beginning to understand the implications of his earlier words. And yet, despite her quiet amusement, Martha wasn't there to shame anyone. She was there to lead, and she intended to earn their respect in the way she knew best, through her work and her integrity. As Mr. Collins wrapped up his presentation, he turned to Martha once more. "Martha, would you like to share some of your thoughts on this initiative?" he asked, his tone inviting her to step fully into her role as their new head. Martha nodded, her gaze sweeping the room as she gathered her thoughts. "Thank you, Mr. Collins," she began, her voice strong and steady. "First, I want to say that this project is an ambitious and exciting opportunity for all of us. I know that restructuring can feel challenging, but my goal is to make this transition as seamless as possible, while ensuring we keep our people's strengths at the forefront." Her words were met with nods of agreement from around the table, and she continued, addressing each concern she anticipated might arise. "I understand that changes can sometimes create tension," she said, her tone empathetic. "But I believe in empowering every member of a team, and I hope to foster an environment where each of you can bring your full potential forward. Together we'll not only achieve these goals, but exceed them." The managers listened closely, their initial skepticism giving way to genuine interest. Martha's steady confidence and inclusive approach began to resonate with them. She could sense a gradual shift in their energy, a recognition that they had misjudged her, and an eagerness to start fresh. As she finished speaking, the room remained silent for a moment, processing her vision and her commitment. Then, one by one, they began to respond, first with nods, then with words of agreement. A few even looked at her with something close to admiration. Martha could feel the beginnings of respect forming, an understanding that this was no ordinary leader before them. Outside, Julie and Mike, who had been watching through the glass with wide eyes, exchanged a look of disbelief mixed with a new kind of respect. They hadn't expected this turn of events, hadn't anticipated that the woman they'd dismissed so easily would now be the one guiding the entire team. The realization hit them both, leaving them silent and thoughtful. Martha, noticing their stunned expressions through the glass, offered them a brief but knowing smile, before turning her focus back to the team inside the room. She was here to lead, to prove herself through action rather than words. And as she looked around at her new colleagues, she felt ready to break through their assumptions and ultimately to bring them into a new chapter of growth and success. After the meeting, Martha lingered briefly in the conference room, gathering her notes as the managers filed out. Each one nodded to her with newfound respect, some even offering tentative smiles. She returned their gestures warmly, her gaze steady, aware of the subtle shift in how they looked at her now. She could sense the mixture of respect and curiosity in their eyes, a hint of regret from some as they recalled their initial assumptions. Martha understood that change wouldn't happen overnight, but this was a start, and she felt satisfied with how the day was progressing. Just as she prepared to leave, Sasha, the young woman who had offered her a kind smile earlier in the lobby, approached. There was a shy excitement in her eyes, and she seemed almost hesitant to speak. "Ms. Turner," she began, her voice soft but eager. "I just wanted to say, I really admired what you said in the meeting. I think everyone did." She hesitated, glancing around to make sure no one else was listening. "We don't always see leadership like that around here." Martha smiled, grateful for Sasha's sincerity. "Thank you, Sasha," she replied. "That means a lot. I believe that leadership isn't about power. It's about empowering others." Her tone was warm, inviting, and she could see Sasha's confidence building as they spoke. Encouraged, Sasha leaned in slightly, her curiosity getting the best of her. "I hope you don't mind me asking," she said carefully, "but when you first came in, some people didn't treat you very fairly. How do you stay so calm about it?" Martha chuckled softly, her eyes sparkling with understanding. "Oh, Sasha," she replied, "I've faced many people who judged me before they even knew me. It happens to all of us in different ways, but I've learned that my worth doesn't depend on anyone's perception. It's something I carry within myself." She paused, letting her words settle. "And in time, people see it too, if you give them a chance." Sasha listened intently, nodding, a look of admiration crossing her face. "Thank you, Miss Turner. I think a lot of us here can learn from that." She offered a small, appreciative smile before heading back to her desk, leaving Martha alone in the conference room once more. As Martha stepped into the hallway, she noticed the ripple effect of her presence. Employees who had once cast dismissive glances were now subtly observing her with curiosity and respect. Some straightened in their seats as she walked by, and others quickly averted their eyes, a hint of embarrassment lingering in their expressions. The change was quiet but unmistakable, a shift from dismissal to intrigue, as they began to question everything they thought they knew about her. Martha paused briefly near the break room, where she could hear faint laughter and casual chatter from within. She recognized some of the voices, Julie and Mike among them, and though their laughter wasn't directed at her this time, she sensed the nervous undertone. They had been caught off guard, and now they were unsure how to behave, as though they were adjusting to a new reality that didn't match the assumptions they had made. Deciding it was time to address this shift head-on, Martha stepped into the break room with a calm smile. The conversation inside came to an abrupt halt as the group noticed her presence. Julie and Mike exchanged an uneasy glance, their faces flushed with awkwardness, while the others offered polite nods, visibly uncertain of how to act. Martha didn't let their discomfort linger. Instead, she approached them with the same quiet warmth that had disarmed so many others throughout her career. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said kindly, her tone inviting rather than accusatory. "I just wanted to say hello and let you all know that my door is always open. I'm here to support everyone in this team." Julie forced a smile, her voice wavering slightly as she replied, "Of course, Ms. Turner. We, look forward to working with you." Her usual confidence had softened, replaced by a slight awkwardness, as she struggled to reconcile her earlier assumptions with the reality of Martha's leadership. Martha offered her a reassuring smile. "Thank you, Julie. I look forward to working with all of you as well." She allowed her gaze to rest on each person in the room, her expression one of genuine warmth. "Remember," she continued, "we're all here to grow, to learn from each other. I may be your leader, but I'm also here to listen, just as much as I am to guide." As she spoke, she could see the walls of tension beginning to dissolve. The group nodded, some of them visibly relieved, while others appeared thoughtful, as though they were processing her words on a deeper level. Martha knew it would take time for true respect and trust to grow, but she also understood that moments like these, moments of openness and humility, would build the foundation for the team she wanted to create. With a final nod, Martha left the break room, feeling a quiet sense of accomplishment. She knew that each interaction, each exchange was reshaping the way they saw her, and perhaps the way they saw each other. The first impressions they had clung to were fading, replaced by the beginnings of understanding and mutual respect. It was a slow process, but she was patient. She had been underestimated before, and she knew that the journey toward respect was one worth taking. Outside, the office buzzed with renewed energy, a subtle but undeniable change filling the air as Martha moved through the halls, embodying the quiet strength and dignity that had brought her here. She knew her work had only just begun, and she was ready to see it through. As the day progressed, Martha settled into her new office, a spacious corner room with wide windows overlooking the city skyline. The office had been freshly prepared for her arrival, yet something about it felt untouched, almost as if it had been waiting for someone to bring it to life. She took a moment to take in the view, feeling the weight of both her journey and the responsibilities ahead. Her heart filled with a quiet sense of pride. This was more than just a position. It was a testament to years of perseverance and quiet strength. Her peace was soon interrupted by a soft knock on the door. She turned to see Tom standing hesitantly in the doorway, his expression uncertain, as though he wasn't sure if he should be there. His usual air of confidence seemed diminished, and he clutched a notepad in one hand, his fingers fidgeting around the pen. "Ms. Turner," he began, his voice lacking its usual assertiveness. I just wanted to stop by to introduce myself formally. I know we met briefly in the lobby earlier, but—" He trailed off, clearly uncomfortable, his face showing a hint of regret for his earlier behavior. Martha gestured for him to enter, her expression warm but neutral. "Of course, Tom," she replied, her tone welcoming. "Come in. I appreciate you stopping by." Tom entered the room, his steps cautious, and took a seat opposite her desk. He cleared his throat, glancing down at his notepad before meeting her gaze. "I wanted to apologize," he said, his voice soft, sincere. I realized that I made an assumption earlier, and it was wrong of me. I didn't expect someone like you to be in this role, and that was my own mistake." Martha watched him, her expression kind but serious. She let his words sink in before responding. "Thank you, Tom. I appreciate your honesty," she said. "It's easy to make assumptions. We all do it, sometimes without even realizing it." Her voice was calm, inviting him to understand without making him feel judged. But true growth comes from acknowledging those moments and choosing to see beyond our first impressions. Tom nodded, visibly humbled. He looked at her with a newfound respect, as if he were seeing her for the first time. "I want you to know that I'm here to support you," he added, his tone earnest. "I've been with the company for a while, and I know the ins and outs, so if there's anything you need, I'd be happy to help." Martha smiled, sensing his genuine intention. "Thank you, Tom. I'll certainly take you up on that offer. I believe every person here brings something valuable to the team, including you. I'm looking forward to seeing what we can accomplish together." He seemed relieved, and they exchanged a few words about the company's current projects. As they spoke, the tension between them softened, replaced by a mutual understanding. Tom's apology had opened a door, not only for a working relationship, but for a connection built on growth and respect. Martha could tell that he wanted to make things right, and that was enough for her. After Tom left, she sat quietly for a moment, reflecting on the conversation. She had encountered many people like Tom in her life, people who judged quickly, often without ill intent, simply out of habit or ignorance. But she knew that those who were willing to acknowledge their biases could grow, and she was here to guide that growth, one person at a time. Her phone buzzed softly, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from Mr. Collins, inviting her to join him for a quick update meeting in his office. She gathered her notes, feeling a sense of satisfaction as she walked down the hall. Each interaction she had, each conversation, was chipping away at the walls of judgment and misunderstanding that had surrounded her. She knew her impact was already starting to ripple outward, and she could feel the subtle shift in the atmosphere as she passed employees in the hallway. People who had barely noticed her that morning now looked at her with respect, some even offering polite smiles and greetings. In Mr. Collins's office, she found him seated at his desk, reviewing a stack of papers. He looked up as she entered, smiling warmly. "Ah, Martha, thank you for coming," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "Of course, Mr. Collins," she replied, taking her seat across from him. He leaned forward, folding his hands on the desk. "I just wanted to check in and see how your first day is going. I know starting a new role is always an adjustment, but from what I've heard, you're already making an impression." Martha smiled, nodding. "It's been a good day so far. I'm starting to get a sense of the team and the work environment here. There are a lot of talented people with strong opinions, but I think we're beginning to find common ground." Mr. Collins chuckled, nodding in agreement. "Yes, that's Collins and Company for you. Strong personalities are part of the culture here. But if anyone can lead this team, it's you. I have no doubt about that." He paused, his expression turning more serious. "Martha, I know some of the younger staff members may have made certain assumptions. I hope it hasn't been too uncomfortable." Martha's expression softened. "It's nothing I haven't encountered before, Mr. Collins. People often see what they want to see, but I find that given time, they come to understand. My focus is on the work and on building a culture where we can all respect each other." Mr. Collins nodded, visibly impressed. "That's exactly why I knew you were right for this role," he said. "We're lucky to have you, Martha, and I'm confident that as they get to know you, the team will feel the same way." They exchanged a few more words about upcoming projects and key priorities for the department. Martha appreciated the opportunity to discuss her ideas with Mr. Collins, whose trust and support were invaluable to her. As she left his office, she felt even more assured in her role, ready to continue guiding her team and breaking through their assumptions, one interaction at a time. After leaving Mr. Collins's office, Martha walked back to her own with a newfound sense of purpose. She'd always believed that leadership was about guiding others to their best potential, but this experience felt different, more personal. She was determined not only to lead, but to shift mindsets, to reshape how her team viewed her, and by extension, one another. She felt the responsibility deeply, knowing it would be a slow, deliberate process. As she returned to her office, she saw a group of employees gathered around a project board in one of the collaborative spaces just outside. Their conversation was animated, but there was an undercurrent of tension, as if they couldn't quite agree on the best path forward. Intrigued, Martha stepped closer, observing quietly for a moment before speaking. "Looks like you're all deep in thought," she said, her tone light but with enough authority to gently pull their attention. The group turned, a few of them startled to see her there, while others looked curious, unsure of how she might respond. One of the team members, a project lead named Sarah, took a small step forward, hesitating only slightly. "We're working on the new workflow proposal for the restructuring project," Sarah explained, her voice respectful but cautious. "There are some different ideas on how to approach it." Her words hinted at the challenges they were facing, strong opinions clashing, a lack of cohesion in direction. Martha nodded thoughtfully, stepping closer to the board and examining their notes and diagrams. She could see the traces of each person's input, conflicting strategies and priorities laid out in colorful marker strokes. Each idea had merit, but they were scattered, lacking an overarching vision. "Mind if I take a look?" she asked, glancing at them with a kind smile. The team nodded, stepping back slightly to give her space, each one watching with interest, some with skepticism, others with curiosity. As she scanned the project details, Martha spoke aloud, her voice calm and steady. "There's a lot of good thinking here," she began, nodding in appreciation, "but I can see why it might feel a bit disconnected. Restructuring a workflow is like setting the foundation for a building. It has to support everything that comes after. If each part isn't in harmony, the structure won't hold." The team listened intently, some nodding as her words resonated with them. Julie, who had been watching from the sidelines, finally stepped forward, her earlier hesitation melting as she spoke up. I think we're struggling to figure out which elements are essential and which can wait. We're trying to do everything at once." Martha smiled, sensing Julie's willingness to engage openly. "That's a common challenge," she replied, her tone encouraging. "Sometimes it helps to start by defining the end goal. What's the core purpose of this restructuring? Once you know that, the rest will fall into place and you'll be able to see which steps are necessary and which can come later." The team exchanged glances, each of them seeming to absorb her advice in their own way. Sarah took a deep breath, nodding thoughtfully. "The core purpose, we want to create a workflow that supports collaboration and efficiency across all departments," she said, as if hearing her own words clarified her vision. "Exactly," Martha replied, her smile widening. "Now, if you focus on that goal and keep it at the center, every decision will start to make more sense. The steps you need to take will reveal themselves." There was a shift in the room, a collective sigh of relief as Martha's guidance took root. Each team member's expression softened, their focus sharpening as if her words had brought them clarity. Martha could see the respect growing in their eyes, a recognition of her insight and experience, and she felt a quiet pride, not for herself, but for the progress they were making together. Julie, clearly inspired, looked at Martha with a newfound admiration. "Thank you, Miss Turner. I think we all needed that reminder," she admitted, her voice sincere. Martha nodded, her gaze warm. "You're all talented and dedicated, and that's the most important thing. Just remember, sometimes less is more. Focus on what truly matters and don't be afraid to let go of the rest." The group murmured their agreement, and Martha stepped back, giving them space to continue their work with fresh energy and a clearer sense of purpose. She watched as they began reevaluating their strategies, aligning their ideas with the overarching goal she'd helped them define. Their faces were brighter now, their movements more confident, as they worked together with a renewed spirit of collaboration. As she turned to return to her office, she noticed Tom watching from the hallway, his expression thoughtful. He approached her, hands in his pockets, looking slightly hesitant. "You have a way of simplifying things that seem complicated," he admitted, a trace of admiration in his voice. "I think that's something we've been missing around here." Martha looked at him, her expression kind but knowing. "Sometimes all it takes is stepping back to see the bigger picture," she replied. "It's easy to get lost in the details, especially when everyone has strong ideas. But I believe in each person's strengths, and I know we can accomplish a lot if we work together." Tom nodded, clearly taking her words to heart. "I can see that now. It's refreshing to have someone who brings that perspective." His voice held a genuine appreciation, a subtle acknowledgement that he, too, was beginning to see beyond his initial judgments. Martha felt a quiet satisfaction as she returned to her office, aware that another barrier had been broken down. She knew there would still be challenges, moments of resistance and doubt, but with each small victory, she was building trust, not only in her leadership, but in her team's potential. And with each step forward, she felt her role becoming less about proving herself and more about guiding others to see what she had always known. That true strength lies in unity, respect, and an unwavering belief in each other's worth. As Martha settled back into her office, the quiet hum of the workspace around her felt different, warmer somehow. She could sense that her team was beginning to trust her, each small interaction building a foundation of respect and openness. This progress felt steady, but she knew she still had a long way to go in reshaping the culture here. She was willing to take her time, knowing that true change wasn't rushed. It required patience, consistency, and, above all, authenticity. Just then, her office phone rang. She picked it up to hear Mr. Collins's assistant, who sounded slightly flustered. "Ms. Turner, I'm sorry to interrupt," she began, "but Mr. Collins has requested your presence in the main conference room. There's a last-minute client meeting that he'd like you to sit in on." Martha didn't hesitate. She grabbed her notebook, smoothing her jacket as she walked briskly to the conference room, her mind already shifting gears to prepare for the meeting. She knew that her visibility in client interactions would be crucial for establishing her role as a key leader at Collins and Company, and she was eager to make a positive impression. When she arrived, Mr. Collins was already seated with a few senior managers, including Julie and Tom, as well as some high-profile clients, executives from a major firm they were partnering with on a significant project. Martha felt their eyes on her as she entered, the clients clearly intrigued by her presence. She moved with quiet confidence, greeting everyone with a polite smile before taking her seat next to Mr. Collins, who offered her an encouraging nod. As the meeting began, Mr. Collins introduced Martha to the clients, giving a brief but powerful overview of her background and the value she brought to the company. She could see the clients' reactions shift from mild curiosity to genuine interest, their body language relaxing as they realized she was someone of significance and substance. Martha has been brought on to lead our operations and drive the efficiency and strategic goals we're aiming to achieve with this partnership, Mr. Collins said. She has a reputation for excellence and a keen eye for both detail and vision, and we're confident that she'll be instrumental in our success together. Martha nodded, allowing Mr. Collins's words to settle before speaking. "Thank you, Mr. Collins," she began, her tone steady and composed. She turned to the clients, her gaze direct and sincere. "I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to collaborate with each of you. My goal is to bring structure and clarity to our workflow, ensuring that every phase of this project aligns with your objectives and maximizes our combined potential." The clients listened closely, nodding along as she outlined her approach. She spoke with the same ease and warmth she had shown in her interactions with the team, balancing authority with openness. She addressed each client's specific concerns, asking thoughtful questions and taking notes on points that needed follow-up. As she spoke, the room seemed to shift, the initial formality giving way to a sense of mutual respect and shared purpose. Julie, seated a few chairs down, watched Martha with a mix of admiration and humility. It was clear that Martha's presence had transformed the room, bringing a level of engagement and focus that everyone could feel. Julie had once viewed Martha as an outsider, someone who didn't belong in their world of fast-paced corporate culture. Now, watching her lead the conversation with such natural confidence, Julie felt her previous assumptions dissolve, replaced by a genuine respect for the woman who was proving herself, not through flashy words or gestures, but through quiet strength and unwavering professionalism. Tom, too, observed Martha closely, noticing the way the clients responded to her. Her words were clear, concise, and grounded in real understanding. There was no pretense, no arrogance, just an authentic desire to ensure that their partnership would succeed. It was a style of leadership he hadn't encountered often, and he found himself inspired, realizing that there was so much he could learn from her approach. As the meeting continued, Martha facilitated a discussion that allowed each client to voice their expectations and concerns. She made them feel heard, asking follow-up questions that showed she truly valued their input. Her calm, attentive demeanor created an atmosphere of trust, and the clients opened up, sharing insights and perspectives that would prove invaluable for the project. By the end of the meeting, the clients were smiling, their satisfaction evident as they exchanged handshakes and final words of thanks. One of the executives turned to Mr. Collins, saying with a smile, "You're in excellent hands with Ms. Turner. I look forward to seeing what her leadership brings to this partnership." Mr. Collins beamed, his pride in Martha unmistakable. "Thank you. We feel very fortunate to have her with us," he replied, glancing at Martha with a smile. She returned the look with quiet gratitude, appreciating his faith in her, and feeling that, in this moment, she had truly earned her place. As the clients left, the room emptied slowly, leaving only Martha, Mr. Collins, Julie, and Tom. There was a brief, comfortable silence as they gathered their notes and prepared to leave. Julie turned to Martha, her expression one of unguarded respect. "Ms. Turner," she said a bit shyly, "I just wanted to say, that was impressive, the way you handled their questions, the way you made them feel heard. It was inspiring. I think we all could learn from that." Martha smiled, a gentle warmth in her eyes. Thank you, Julie, I appreciate that. I believe that every relationship, whether it's with a client or a team member, is built on trust and respect. When people feel valued, they're more open to collaboration. Tom nodded, visibly moved by the moment. I can see that now. I think we're lucky to have someone like you guiding us, he added, his tone sincere. Martha acknowledged their compliments with humility, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. Each interaction, each shift in perception, was another step toward creating a culture that valued people for who they were and what they could bring to the table. She had been patient, letting her actions speak louder than words, and it was clear that her approach was resonating. As she left the conference room with her colleagues, she felt a quiet sense of pride, not just in her own achievements, but in the small, steady transformation she was witnessing in those around her. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, but with each day, she was proving that true leadership was not about demanding respect, but earning it, step by step, through empathy, patience, and an unwavering commitment to empowering others. The following morning, Martha arrived at the office early, eager to continue building on the progress she'd made. She found the quiet of the nearly empty office refreshing, a peaceful prelude to the busy day ahead. As she settled into her office, reviewing her plans for the week, she heard a soft knock at the door. Looking up, she saw Sasha, the young woman who had shown her kindness on her first day. Sasha looked hesitant but determined, clutching a stack of reports to her chest. "Good morning, Miss Turner," Sasha greeted, stepping into the office. "I hope I'm not disturbing you, but I was wondering if I could ask for your advice on something?" Martha's face softened with a warm smile. "Of course, Sasha. Come in and sit down. I'm glad you felt comfortable enough to reach out." Sasha sat down, visibly relieved by Martha's welcoming demeanor. She took a deep breath, placing the reports on the desk. "I've been working on this quarterly report for my department, and I want to make sure it aligns with the new goals you outlined. But I'm worried it might be too ambitious. I want it to reflect the changes you're implementing, but I don't want to overpromise." Martha leaned forward, listening intently as Sasha explained her concerns. She could see that Sasha cared deeply about her work and wanted to make a meaningful contribution, yet lacked confidence in her own ideas. It reminded Martha of herself in her earlier years, navigating corporate environments where every step felt scrutinized and every decision seemed to carry weight. "Sasha," Martha began gently, "I can see that you're putting a lot of thought into this report, and that's the most important part. Ambition isn't something to shy away from. It's how we set new standards and inspire progress. The key is to balance that ambition with clear, achievable steps. Let's go through it together and see where we can refine your goals without losing that drive." Sasha's face lit up with relief, and together, they went through each section of the report. Martha offered suggestions, helping Sasha streamline her objectives while preserving the essence of her ideas. She encouraged Sasha to highlight her achievements thus far and show a clear plan for moving forward, adding concrete steps that made the ambitious targets feel within reach. As they worked, Sasha grew more confident, her doubts melting away under Martha's guidance. She even began to offer new ideas, bouncing them off Martha with a growing sense of enthusiasm. By the time they finished, the report had transformed into a polished, strategic plan that Sasha felt proud to present. Sasha looked up, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Ms. Turner. I really didn't expect you to take the time to help me like this," she said, her voice soft with appreciation. "Most people in your position are too busy to sit down and go over details with someone like me." Martha met her gaze, her expression gentle but firm. "Sasha, never underestimate the value you bring. Every person here contributes to the success of this company, and your work matters just as much as anyone else's. I want you to know that I'm here for my team, not just for the big picture decisions, and I hope you'll always feel comfortable coming to me." Sasha nodded, her face glowing with newfound confidence. "Thank you. I promise I'll do my best to make this report reflect everything we're working toward." As Sasha left, Martha felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was why she had taken on this role, not just to lead projects or make executive decisions, but to cultivate a culture where every team member felt valued and empowered to reach their full potential. She knew that her small act of mentorship would ripple outward, inspiring Sasha and, by extension, others to bring their best to the company. Later that day, as Martha passed through the main office, she saw Sasha sharing her polished report with her department colleagues, her voice steady and assured. Sasha's enthusiasm was contagious, and her team listened with interest, nodding in agreement and offering their own ideas. Martha observed from a distance, satisfied to see Sasha's confidence blooming in real time. Her influence was taking root, not through grand gestures but through the quiet support that encouraged others to shine. As she moved on, Martha noticed more subtle shifts in the office. Employees who had once looked at her with skepticism or indifference now acknowledged her with nods of respect. Some even approached her in passing, asking small questions about the project, seeking her input, or simply greeting her warmly. The initial barriers of assumption and doubt were fading, replaced by a culture of curiosity and openness. That afternoon, Mr. Collins stopped by her office for a quick check-in, a smile of approval on his face. "I've been hearing great things, Martha," he said. "I can see the impact you're having, and I want you to know it's not going unnoticed." Martha smiled, a quiet pride in her voice. "Thank you, Mr. Collins. I believe that if you give people the support they need, they'll rise to the occasion." He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I've seen a lot of leaders come through this company, Martha, but I have to say, your approach is something special. You don't just lead, you bring out the best in others. It's exactly what this company has needed." Martha accepted his words with humility, knowing that her journey was far from over, but feeling a deep sense of satisfaction in the work she'd done so far. She understood that true change came not through authority, but through the quiet, persistent acts that built trust and inspired others to grow. As she watched Mr. Collins leave, Martha felt more committed than ever to the path she'd chosen. She was ready to continue leading her team forward, one person at a time, one moment at a time, planting the seeds of respect and resilience that would transform not only the company, but each individual within it. She knew the journey would still bring challenges and resistance, but she was prepared, for her greatest strength lay not in demanding respect, but in earning it, one meaningful connection at a time. In the following weeks, Martha's influence continued to grow quietly but steadily. Each day, she invested time in small, intentional interactions with her team, listening to their ideas, addressing their concerns, and empowering them to take ownership of their work. She made a point of stopping by different departments, sharing insights and offering guidance where needed, each visit serving to dismantle more of the initial reservations her team had held. One morning, as she walked through the office, she noticed a buzz of activity near the design department. The team appeared tense, clustered around a whiteboard filled with sketches and notes. Martha sensed a project crisis, the kind that tends to create frustration and pressure. She approached quietly, observing as Julie, the project lead, attempted to motivate her team, but the frustration was evident on everyone's faces. "Is there a challenge I can help with?" Martha asked, her tone calm and supportive, signaling she was there to lend a hand, not impose authority. Julie glanced up, a mixture of relief and worry crossing her face. "Actually, yes, Miss Turner," she admitted. "We're struggling to finalize the concept for our new campaign. We want something bold, something that really stands out, but we keep hitting a wall. It's hard to find a balance that meets the client's expectations and keeps the brand's core identity intact." Martha nodded thoughtfully, understanding the weight of the team's struggle. "May I see what you have so far?" she asked, gesturing toward the whiteboard. Julie and the team members eagerly showed her their ideas, explaining each one's strengths and limitations. Martha listened intently, her gaze focused on their sketches and notes. As they spoke, she asked guiding questions, probing gently to uncover the core message they wanted to communicate. Gradually, she helped them articulate a vision that combined creativity with the brand's identity, providing just enough guidance to allow their ideas to flourish. Within minutes, the energy in the room transformed. The team began to rework their concepts with renewed excitement, their ideas flowing freely and seamlessly. Martha stepped back, allowing them the space to collaborate, sensing that her role was not to control the process, but to create an environment where their creativity could thrive. She watched as Julie's confidence grew, taking charge of the campaign's direction with clarity and enthusiasm. Before leaving, Martha gave Julie a reassuring nod. "You have a great team here, and you're leading them well. Trust in that, and trust in your instincts. I'm confident you'll create something remarkable." Julie smiled, visibly encouraged. "Thank you, Ms. Turner. I think we just needed a fresh perspective, and someone to remind us to believe in our vision." As Martha walked away, she felt a sense of satisfaction. She hadn't solved the problem for them. Instead, she had empowered them to find the solution on their own. This, she knew, was the essence of true leadership, cultivating an atmosphere of confidence and mutual trust that allowed others to reach their fullest potential. Each moment like this, each subtle encouragement, strengthened the bonds within the team and reinforced her role as a leader who truly cared. The positive momentum continued, and soon, Martha's style of leadership began to influence not only the team's morale, but their performance as well. Projects were completed more efficiently, collaboration became smoother, and even the atmosphere in the office felt lighter. The initial barriers of skepticism and doubt had almost entirely dissolved, replaced by a culture of openness, respect, and genuine appreciation for Martha's guidance. One afternoon, as she was reviewing reports in her office, Tom knocked on her door with an excited expression. "Ms. Turner, I thought you'd want to see this," he said, holding a document up with a broad smile. "It's the performance metrics from last quarter. We've exceeded every target. Client satisfaction is up, project turnaround times are down, and the team engagement scores are at an all-time high." Martha took the report, scanning the numbers with a quiet sense of pride. Each metric reflected the hard work and dedication of her team, but she knew it also represented something deeper, a transformation in the company culture, a shift that had made everyone feel valued and motivated. She looked up at Tom, her eyes warm with gratitude. "This is wonderful news, Tom. But remember, it's a team achievement. Every person here has contributed to this success." Tom nodded, his expression filled with respect. "Yes, but it's your leadership that's brought us together. I think we all know that, Ms. Turner." He hesitated as though gathering his thoughts before adding, "I have to say, I never thought leadership could look like this. I always assumed it was about giving orders, making decisions from the top down. But you've shown us that leadership can be different, strong, but in a way that empowers others." Martha's face softened, touched by his words. "Leadership comes in many forms," she said gently. "For me, it's about creating a space where people can bring their best selves, where they feel safe to take risks and trust one another. I believe in my team's potential, and I'm here to support them, not overshadow them." Tom seemed to consider this, his expression contemplative. "I think a lot of us have learned that from you," he admitted. "It's changed the way I see my role here and what I want to contribute." As Tom left her office, Martha reflected on how far they had come. What had once been a team divided by assumptions and insecurities was now united by shared goals and mutual respect. She knew that her journey wasn't over. There would still be challenges, both within the company and in their external projects, but she felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her presence was making a difference. That evening, as the office began to empty out, she took a moment to stand by the large windows overlooking the city, watching the sunset cast a warm glow over the skyline. She thought of all the years she had worked to reach this point, each hardship and victory shaping her into the leader she had become. This wasn't just a role for her. It was a calling, a purpose fulfilled through the countless connections she made each day. She knew her journey here was just beginning, but for the first time, she felt truly at home in this office, in this role, and within herself. She understood that her power lay not in her title, but in the strength she inspired in others, and she felt ready to continue leading her team forward, toward new challenges, new achievements, and a future that was theirs to build together. In the following days, Martha noticed a distinct change in the team's energy. Conversations in the office had become more collaborative, with employees engaging openly, exchanging ideas, and even approaching her with suggestions. The air felt lighter, filled with a sense of shared purpose that went beyond daily tasks and deadlines. Her approach had started a ripple effect, a quiet revolution in the company's culture that was evident in the smallest interactions. One morning, as she walked through the office, Martha overheard two employees discussing an upcoming project. They were brainstorming ways to streamline the process, clearly inspired by her emphasis on efficiency and teamwork. She didn't interrupt, instead, pausing just out of sight to listen. The confidence in their voices, the creativity they were bringing to their roles, it filled her with a deep sense of satisfaction. She had always believed that empowering others was the key to lasting success, and here it was, taking root naturally among her team. Her thoughts were interrupted by Mr. Collins, who approached with a welcoming smile. "Martha, could we have a quick chat in my office?" he asked, his tone light but with a note of formality that suggested he had something important to discuss. Curious, she followed him into his office, where he gestured for her to take a seat. Once they were settled, he leaned forward, his gaze warm and appreciative. "Martha, I wanted to personally commend you on the impact you've had here. It's been truly transformative. I've seen the metrics, but more importantly, I've seen the change in people, the way they carry themselves, the energy they bring to work. It's remarkable, and it's because of your leadership." Martha accepted his praise humbly, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. "Thank you, Mr. Collins. I'm grateful for the trust you placed in me. I believe in this team and the potential they have. I'm just glad to see them flourish." Mr. Collins nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I actually have a proposal for you," he began, choosing his words carefully. "We're considering expanding our operations to a new division. It's a big step, but I believe you're the right person to oversee it. You've proven that you can inspire change and cultivate a thriving environment. This expansion could use your touch, your approach to leadership." The proposition caught Martha by surprise. She had dedicated herself fully to this team, this transformation, but the idea of extending her influence, of bringing her philosophy to a new division, was intriguing. She knew it would be a challenge, but the opportunity to guide yet another group through growth and change was appealing, an invitation to continue the work she was so passionate about. "That's an incredible opportunity," she replied after a moment, her voice steady but thoughtful. "I would be honored to take on that responsibility. If there's a chance to make a difference, to bring this culture to another team, I'd love to be part of it." Mr. Collins smiled, clearly pleased with her response. "I knew you'd say yes," he said with a wink. "We'll work out the details, but I have every confidence that you'll bring the same success to this new division as you have here." As she left his office, Martha felt a surge of excitement tempered by a sense of responsibility. This new role wouldn't just be an expansion of her duties. It would be an extension of her vision, a chance to nurture a culture of empowerment on a larger scale. She knew it would be a challenge, but she was ready to face it with the same patience and purpose that had brought her this far. News of Martha's new role spread quickly through the office, sparking a wave of mixed emotions. Her current team was thrilled for her, but there was also an underlying concern about what her departure would mean. Over the past months, she had become their anchor, the leader who had given them confidence and direction. The thought of her leaving, even to take on a larger role, created a ripple of uncertainty. Julie and Tom, especially, found themselves grappling with this change. They knew that Martha's new position was well-deserved, and that her influence would be beneficial to the company as a whole. But they couldn't help feeling a sense of loss. The idea of returning to a leadership structure that might not share Martha's vision left them uneasy. Sensing the shift, Martha decided to address her team directly. She gathered everyone in the main conference room, her face warm with reassurance as she looked around at each familiar face. The room was filled with a quiet tension, the employees clearly apprehensive about what her new role might mean for them. "First of all, I want to thank each of you," she began, her voice steady and sincere. "This team has achieved so much, and it's because of each person's commitment, hard work, and dedication. I may be stepping into a new role, but I want you to know that I'm not leaving you behind. This team is a part of who I am, and everything we've built together will continue to thrive." She paused, allowing her words to settle, her gaze meeting each person's eyes. "I've been given an opportunity to bring our culture to another division, to create the same kind of growth we've experienced here. But I want you all to remember that this success isn't just about me. It's about what we have built together, and just because I won't be here every day doesn't mean my support is any less. I will still be involved, and I will always be available to each of you." Julie raised her hand, her voice slightly shaky as she spoke. "Ms. Turner, we've learned so much from you. It's hard to imagine this place without your guidance." Martha gave her a reassuring smile. "Julie, you and everyone here have grown in ways that inspire me every day. You have the tools, the confidence, and the vision to keep moving forward. I'm proud of each one of you, and I know that you'll continue to accomplish great things." Tom nodded, his expression thoughtful. "You've shown us a new way of working together, a new way of thinking about leadership. We'll carry that with us, Ms. Turner." Martha felt a warmth fill her heart, grateful for the connections she had built with each of them. "That's all I could hope for," she replied, her voice filled with genuine pride. "This isn't the end. It's a new chapter. And as you continue to grow, remember that everything we've built is still here, within each of you. Trust in that, and trust in each other." As the meeting ended, the room felt lighter, the initial apprehension replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. They understood that Martha's legacy would live on in their work, in the culture she had fostered, and in the confidence she had instilled in each of them. Martha left the room knowing her team was ready, that they would carry forward the values she had worked so hard to instill. And as she prepared for this new challenge, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing she was leaving behind not just a team, but a community built on respect, trust, and shared purpose. As Martha transitioned into her new role, she spent her first few weeks laying the groundwork in the new division. Her presence was met with a mixture of curiosity and uncertainty, much like it had been when she first arrived at Collins & Company. She knew the importance of taking time to understand this new team, to observe their dynamics, and to listen before making changes. Unlike the trust she had already established with her former team, here she would need to earn their respect from scratch. She began by holding one-on-one meetings with each department head, listening as they described their challenges and aspirations. She asked open-ended questions, inviting them to speak freely, knowing that these conversations would provide invaluable insight. She quickly learned that this division operated with a more traditional, top-down approach. Decision-making was often siloed, and some employees felt that their voices weren't heard. Martha could see that this environment, while effective in certain ways, limited creativity and hindered collaboration. Her task here would be twofold: to address operational inefficiencies and, more importantly, to foster a sense of community and openness. One afternoon, while reviewing feedback reports, she invited the department heads to a team-building session. It was a simple gathering, designed to encourage open discussion and build trust. Martha started by sharing her journey, her experiences, her philosophy on leadership, and the values she wanted to bring to the division. She was transparent about her vision, explaining that her role was to support them, not to impose changes without understanding their unique perspectives. At first, the department heads were hesitant. Many of them had grown accustomed to a hierarchical style, where the leader dictated the direction without input from below. But as Martha spoke, her authenticity resonated with them. She assured them that her goal was not to disrupt, but to enhance their work, to create an environment where they felt valued and heard. Gradually, the atmosphere softened, and one by one the department heads began to open up. Martha encouraged them to share their own stories, to express the challenges they faced, both as leaders and as individuals within the division. By the end of the session, she could sense a shift. They were no longer just a group of managers following orders. They were individuals beginning to see themselves as part of a larger team, united by common goals. Martha knew this was only the beginning, but the session had laid an important foundation of trust, one she would continue to build upon in the weeks to come. Back at her former division, Martha's legacy continued to thrive under the leadership of her previous team members. Julie, Tom, and Sasha, inspired by Martha's influence, had naturally stepped into guiding roles. Each of them brought their unique strengths to the table, reinforcing the values Martha had instilled in them. They didn't see themselves as her replacements. Instead, they felt like stewards of her vision, carrying forward her approach to leadership and culture. One day, Julie called a team meeting to discuss a new project proposal. She had noticed a few team members struggling with the scope and direction, unsure of how to proceed. Drawing from Martha's approach, Julie began the meeting with an open-ended question, inviting everyone to share their thoughts and concerns. Her calm, patient manner created an environment of trust, and soon, the team members were contributing openly, just as they had when Martha led them. Tom observed from his seat, a proud smile on his face. He had seen how much Julie had grown, not just as a manager, but as a leader in her own right. Inspired by Martha, he too had made changes in his approach. He was no longer the man who passed quick judgments or led with rigid authority. Instead, he had become a mentor to the junior staff, offering guidance and encouragement, much like Martha had done for him. Sasha, who had found confidence under Martha's mentorship, now took on responsibilities she had once been afraid to approach. She had become the unofficial morale booster, often organizing team activities, checking in on colleagues, and fostering a sense of camaraderie. She knew Martha's presence had left a lasting impact, and she was determined to keep that spirit alive. Their combined efforts were paying off. The team's performance remained strong, and their morale was high. Julie, Tom, and Sasha had become a cohesive unit, a trio of leaders who worked together seamlessly, each contributing to the team's growth. They often exchanged stories about Martha's wisdom, her guidance echoing in every decision they made, her lessons shaping the culture they now maintained. One afternoon, as they were preparing for a presentation, Tom remarked, "You know, I never imagined leadership could feel this and meaningful. I used to think it was just about getting the job done, but Martha showed us that it's so much more. It's about lifting others, inspiring them to bring their best, and building something that lasts." Julie nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "She taught us to look beyond ourselves to see the strength in every team member. I never realized how powerful that could be until now." Sasha chimed in, smiling. "And the best part is, she trusted us to carry it forward. She believed in us even when we didn't believe in ourselves. That's what makes her such a remarkable leader." They all fell silent for a moment, reflecting on Martha's influence, each of them feeling a deep sense of gratitude. Though she was no longer with them day to day, her presence remained strong, woven into the very fabric of their work, their relationships, and their vision for the future. They knew that no matter where they went from here, they would carry Martha's lessons with them, passing them on to others, just as she had done for them. And in that quiet moment, they realized that Martha had not just changed their team, she had changed their lives. In the new division, Martha's presence had become a steady influence, subtly reshaping the way her team operated and interacted. Her approach to leadership was unconventional to many who had only known top-down management styles, but slowly, her philosophy of empowerment was taking root. Employees who had once been hesitant to share their ideas now spoke up in meetings, inspired by Martha's openness and encouragement. One day, during a strategy meeting with department heads, Martha sensed tension among a few of the managers. They were discussing a complex project that required cross-departmental coordination, and disagreements were brewing over how resources should be allocated. The usual approach would have been for Martha, as the division head, to make a swift decision and settle the matter. But instead, she chose to create an opportunity for collaboration. "Let's take a step back," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "I want each of you to take a few minutes to explain your department's perspective on this project, your needs, your challenges, and what you hope to achieve. By understanding where everyone is coming from, we can find a solution that benefits us all." At first, the managers were skeptical, glancing at each other as if unsure of how this approach would resolve their differences. But as Martha encouraged each person to speak, an unexpected dynamic unfolded. They began to listen to one another, recognizing the specific needs and constraints each department faced. Slowly, the tension eased, replaced by a shared sense of purpose. They realized that they weren't competing against each other. They were working toward a common goal. As the discussion progressed, they found ways to compromise, allocating resources in a way that respected each department's priorities while aligning with the overall vision. Martha observed with quiet satisfaction as the team worked through their issues together, guided by mutual respect and understanding. When the meeting concluded, one of the managers approached her, a thoughtful look in his eyes. "I have to admit, I didn't think this approach would work," he confessed. "I thought we'd just end up arguing, but you've shown us a different way. It's refreshing to feel heard, to know that our perspectives matter." Martha smiled, her voice warm. "When people feel valued, they're more willing to collaborate. I believe that every person here brings something important to the table. My role isn't just to make decisions, but to create an environment where we can all contribute and succeed together." The manager nodded, clearly moved by her words. Martha's leadership style had challenged his assumptions, showing him that leadership wasn't just about authority, but about trust, empathy, and fostering a collective vision. He knew that working under her guidance would continue to shape him, not only as a manager, but as a person. As he left the room, Martha felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. She could see that her approach was making an impact, gradually transforming the division's culture. It was a slow process, requiring patience and persistence, but she knew that these small steps would lead to meaningful, lasting change. Back at her former division, the ripple effects of Martha's influence continued to shape the team in profound ways. Julie, Tom, and Sasha had each taken on expanded roles, working closely together to maintain the positive culture Martha had established. They had embraced her philosophy of empowerment and inclusivity, leading with the same quiet strength and integrity that Martha had modeled for them. One day, they gathered the team for an all-hands meeting, eager to discuss a new project that would require everyone's participation. The room was filled with energy, the team members ready and eager to contribute. Julie began the meeting by outlining the project's goals and inviting ideas from everyone, just as Martha had always done. The team responded enthusiastically, each person sharing their thoughts inspired by the open, collaborative environment that had become their norm. As the meeting went on, Tom noticed a new employee, a young analyst named Luis, hesitating at the edge of the group. Recognizing the familiar uncertainty, he approached Luis with a friendly smile. "We'd love to hear your thoughts," he encouraged. "You bring a fresh perspective, and that's exactly what we need." Luis glanced around, clearly surprised by the invitation. Gathering his courage, he shared a suggestion about optimizing the data analysis process. The idea was met with enthusiasm, and the team immediately began discussing ways to integrate his approach. For the first time, Luis felt valued, part of something larger than himself, a feeling he'd rarely experienced in previous workplaces. Sasha, watching the interaction unfold, felt a swell of pride. This was exactly what Martha had shown them, that every voice mattered, that leadership was about lifting others up and creating a space where they could thrive. She exchanged a glance with Julie and Tom, each of them silently acknowledging the impact Martha's mentorship had left on them. As the meeting concluded, the team dispersed with renewed energy, excited to dive into the project. Julie, Tom, and Sasha lingered behind, sharing a quiet moment of reflection. They had each grown under Martha's guidance, stepping into their roles not as replacements but as carriers of her legacy, and they were committed to passing on her values to the next generation of leaders. "I think Martha would be proud of what we're building here," Julie said softly, her voice filled with emotion. Tom nodded, his expression thoughtful. "She taught us that leadership is about service, about helping others see their potential. It's a lesson I'll carry with me always." Sasha smiled, looking around at the team they had nurtured, a team that was flourishing because of Martha's influence. "She didn't just change us, she changed how we see ourselves and each other, and I think that's the greatest gift a leader can give." They left the meeting room with a renewed sense of purpose, grateful for the journey they had shared under Martha's guidance, and determined to continue her legacy. They knew that though she had moved on to a new role, her presence would always be with them, woven into the fabric of their work, their relationships, and their shared vision for the future. And as they returned to their desks, ready to take on new challenges, they knew they were not just colleagues, but a community bound by respect, trust, and the quiet strength of a leader who had shown them that greatness lay not in power, but in the ability to inspire others to reach their fullest potential.